Good afternoon and welcome to this week's BizSmart Lunch and Learn webinar. Our weekly webinars are aimed to provide advice and share key knowledge and business topics and specialist areas. Our host today is BizSmart Select member Kirsten Kluwer from Kluwer HR and here to talk to us about DISC profiling. Before we start our webinar, can I ask you all to use the question mark function on your screen to post any questions that you may have for Kirsten, and she will do her best to answer them all at the end of the session. Thank you, Kirsten. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Caroline, and hello to everybody. Thank you for joining. I was going to talk to you today about a tool that we use a lot across our business and across clients as well. And it just gives you some background to people's preferred way of behaving and how you can adapt communication so you get the best out of your communication with others, whether that be an employee, a colleague, or it might be a customer, a manager, whoever it might be. And obviously you can also use the theory at home as well. So we're talking today in relation to communication across teams. So I'll start then, just a bit of background to this. We've all got personal ways of behaving in different situations, and through life we'll go on repeating these ways as and when we come across different situations and scenarios, and we'll carry on repeating them unless of course we have some adverse reaction to those ways that makes us adapt our behaviour. But that's the easiest way of sort of going on really, and as we do. And we'll be attempting to predict situations as and when we come across them, and we'll be doing this subconsciously all the time. And then what we'll do is form an opinion of someone as well, almost immediately, based on first impressions. And this happens whether we want to or not. So again, this is a bit of a starting point to the model. So then I'm going to move on and talk to you about the DISC model, which is the tool that we use. And the idea is that by understanding the model, you can then start to modify your own style, and you can interpret the style of others, and you can change the way that you communicate with those people so you get the best from them. And the result of this is then that you're moving from your preferred behaviour to more situational behaviour, so behaviour that's specific to the situation that you're in rather than what might come naturally to you. So that's from natural behaviour to actual learned behaviour, and it'll be much less spontaneous behaviour, hopefully, to more considered behaviour that fits that situation that you're in. So what it is and isn't then. What DISC is, it describes a person's natural reaction mode or behaviour style to a different situation, and it's based on self-evaluation. So if you were to profile yourself, you would be first of all asked to answer 24 questions, and the profile takes about 10 minutes to complete, and that it's those questions that then gives you your profile. So what it isn't then, the DISC profile doesn't classify people into good or bad. There's no good, but there's no better style or worse style to be, and it doesn't give high or low scores in any other way. We're not trying to say that there's a type of person that's better or worse in a situation. It's about having an awareness of what your natural behaviour styles are, so that then you can get the best out of the situation that you're in. And it also doesn't limit a person's ability to develop into another directional work environment. So if you are a particular style, that doesn't mean you can't show behaviours of another style. It just means that it will take more energy for you to do that. And it certainly isn't a measure of intelligence or professional skills or attitudes at all. So on to the DISC model then. We've got, if you imagine you split the DISC first of all down the middle, and on the one side of the model you've got your introvert people, and then on the other side you've got your extroverts. So that's half and half, and then if you add on to that grid again the other axes, and on the top there you've got your task orientated people, and then you've got your people focused people, and then we can plot onto that the 4 different styles. So you can see the task-focused extroverted people are our D styles, the people-focused extroverts are our I styles, The people-focused introverts are our S styles, and the task-focused introverts are our C styles. And from that we can then plot that onto what we call our extended disc diamond. And that will actually, when you have a profile, you'll be plotted within that diamond, and it'll show you the extent to which you are that style, and it'll go into more detail within the style itself as well. It'll also show you your perceived need to adjust, and that's the style that you have a sort of subconscious need in your head that you think you need to be working towards being more of. So you might be, in theory, on the D style part of the diamond, but have this subconscious need to be more showing more of S style behaviours. So let's look at then our styles in turn. We've got our D styles to start with. These people are very decisive and tough people, and they are strong-willed. They're quite competitive, or very competitive in the extreme D, and they come across as very demanding. They are independent, and they can be a little bit self-centered. Now, under pressure, these people lack concern, and this is really concern for others and what others think and what others' needs might be. And their greatest fear is actually losing control of the situation. And very quickly then, how you might identify someone like this: if you're speaking to them on the phone, they will be interrupting you quite a lot. They'll be talking over the top of you probably. And their motive for this is that actually they probably think that what they've got to say is more important than actually what you're saying at the time. They'll be in a hurry as well. They'll quickly want to rush through the conversation because they'll be thinking of the next thing. They've got lots of projects on the go, and as such they can come across as being a little bit impolite. And I should say at this stage as well that, because D styles I always think get a bit of a hard time of it, as we go through life, we're obviously socialised. So whilst this is a sort of a D style in the crude sense of the D style, if you like, but we're socialised as we go through life's experiences. So people will adapt and have strategies to overcome what their natural behaviour wants them to do. Then the pros and cons then of a D style. Well, obviously they're going to be very determined people, and we can see the advantages of that within running a business, for example. They're very strong. They will get results, and they'll get results quickly. They act fast, and they aren't afraid to take risks. On the downside though, they can come across as a little bit rough and pressuring. They're dreadfully sore losers because they are so competitive. They're driven to win. They can be regarded as a bit selfish, and they're a bit of a loose cannon. They can be a risk in a business as well. So whilst they're happy to take risks, this isn't always a good thing. Our I styles then, these guys, they're really sociable, talkative and open people. They bring lots of enthusiasm to a team and energy, and they're very persuasive. So just to remind you, these are our extroverted, people-focused people. Under pressure, they can be a little bit disorganised, and their greatest fear is social rejection. They want everyone to like them, and as such, they can be a bit two-faced because they want to please everybody. So they'll probably be saying what everybody wants them to hear, which might not be necessarily what the next person they speak to wanted to hear. And you can identify these people in a group. They're very excited people. They're very open and friendly, and they will be openly expressing when they agree with you, or when you they'll be nodding their heads because they're happy that you're all sort of thinking the same thing. And they emphasize the positive side of things. That's just naturally in them. They're very optimistic people, and they will want to talk a lot. And they too can sort of they're more transmit than receive, a bit like the D styles, but they just love chatting and being out there and being sociable, and they will also avoid detail. Detail to them they'll glaze over if you go into too much detail with an I style person. Pros and cons then of our I styles. Of course, they bring enthusiasm to a team, and they're very active. They'll be having lots of ideas all the time. And they're people, so they're going to be relationship experts, and they're fast starters. They will, as I say, be coming up with ideas, but the question is whether they actually carry them through is another one. The downside of our I styles, they can be too intuitive. They'll make decisions based on too much intuition rather than maybe bringing enough fact and detail into it. They can be a bit emotional, and they can have a tendency to butterfly around and juggle too many balls at one time. So then we move on to our S styles, the third on the disc diamond. These people are our introverts but people-focused people. They're very calm and steady people, and they're careful and patient. Often primary school teachers, you find, have got a lot of S style in them. I think we can all relate to why that would be. And they're family orientated, and they're great listeners as well. So they as opposed to our D's and I's, who, as I say, are more transmit than receive, our S styles are they will like to listen to you, and they'll be much more modest, and they will wait to be invited really before they give an opinion. They're also very trustworthy people. Under pressure, they're too willing. They'll say yes to everything and then worry about how they're going to do it all in the privacy of their own office or home. And their greatest fear is actually loss of stability. So if you can imagine within a team, if you were undergoing a big change project, you would want to be thinking quite carefully about how you were going to manage your S styles within the team, because they're probably going to be most rocked by this. And then how to identify your S styles. They're very secure and stable people, and they proceed carefully before they enter into anything. And you can tell them because they'll be listening and nodding. They want to show that they are listening to what you've got to say. And they much prefer to be one-to-one rather than in a large group. So you often find that S styles have fewer, deeper friendships, whereas the I styles, they're the sort that they know everybody, and that they'll introduce you to anyone at a party, whereas S styles, they will have good friends, but there will be fewer of them. Pros and cons then of our S styles. Well, they're very pleasant, and they're very good at gaining trust. So obviously, again, there's a place for these people within a team. And they're always seeking compromise. They're quite diplomatic people. They'll want everyone to be happy, even if that means there's a bit of a cost to them. They just want an even keel, really. And to S styles, friends and family are very important. The downside of an S style is they can be quite slow, and they stick to routine quite rigidly. As we said, they're yes people, so they can get overburdened, and they have a tendency to give in very easily and can be walked over by other people who are stronger than them in terms of the behavioural style. And then finally, we've got our C style people, and these guys, they are introverts and task focused, and they are very precise. You'll recognise these sorts of people. They're very precise, and they like to follow rules. They won't necessarily make rules, they'll want to refer to rules. And they're very logical and careful in the way they work, and very formal and disciplined. So you wouldn't probably see a D style person being tactile in their communication style, whereas an I style might touch your arm when they're talking to you, be quite a C style is very aware of personal space. Under pressure, our C styles can be a bit overcritical, a little bit pedantic, and their fear is actually criticism of their own work. They hate making mistakes. And we can identify a C style person amongst us because everything will be perfectly in order. And when you're talking to them, they'll be focusing on the detail and asking lots and lots of detailed questions, which if you're an I style, the polar opposite on that disc grid that you can see there on the right, you will find that frustrating potentially and dull. They're very polite, C styles. They're polite in a diplomatic way, and they don't like to talk about opinions or abstract matters. They actually like to work in facts and figures, and they won't work on intuition, like, for example, an I style. And as I said earlier, they don't order people. They will refer to rules. Accountants are often C styles. And they much prefer communicating in writing, because then they can put a lot of thought into what they're saying before they say it, and it's all written down for them. So that appeals to a C style. Pros and cons of RC styles then. They're thorough and persistent. And they're matter of fact, and facts are very important to them. So of course, again, there's certainly a role for them within any team. On the downside, though, they too are a bit slow, and they can have a tendency not to see the forest for the trees. They get so bogged down in the detail, they can lose sight of the bigger picture. And they can be a bit difficult to approach, a bit cold. Again, these are the very formal, disciplined styles on the profile. And they're experts in their area, and that can be frustrating for people as well. So that's given you an overview then of the 4 styles, but it's now about for you to try and use that information to understand your style and then how others may perceive you, and you can do that much easier obviously if you've got a profile. And then you can also then use that to try and recognise the style of others. And then, as I said at the beginning, it's about adapting your communication style to get the most out of your communication, whether that be with a client, a member of your team, a manager, or again, or at home even. So, any questions?
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Let's see if there's any questions coming through. Right, your first question is from Sarah, and she asked, is there any one style that is better to be?
Okay, thank you, Sarah. No, there isn't. There's not any one style that's better to be. I think, as we've said, every style has something to bring, and it really depends on what the role is that you're doing. You will have people that there's stats to show that you'll have people in particular roles that tend to be of certain styles. So I think I said earlier, primary school teachers are often S styles. The nurses are often S styles, so they're the people-focused introvert styles. Whereas you might have someone, if you had someone in the business that needs to go out there and network, business development, going to all the network, the breakfast meetings for you, you'd be as well to put an I style person in there. They would be in their element, working the room and interacting with people.
Okay, thank you. And you've got another question from Laura, and she asks, can I be more than one style?
Yes, you can. Definitely. And if you were to have a profile, you would see that on the there's a graph, and it will show you anything above a certain line are the behaviour styles that come naturally to you, and you have to exert the least amount of energy. And generally people will have a predominant style, and then they'll have the next one in line, if you like. So for example, you might have an ID style, so that would mean their predominant style would be behaviours typically associated with an I style person, and then the next thing that they sort of would most naturally do is exert the behaviours of a D style. So yes, you can.
Okay, thank you. And another question from Simon, how do I find out what style I am?
Well, to find out your style, we would need to profile you, and that's where you complete a short questionnaire, 24 questions, that you follow a link that we would send, and you can complete that, and then once you've done that, we can send your profile to you.
Okay, great, thank you. And Philip asks, is it possible to use this to compare people's suitability for a job with each other or with people in general?
Absolutely. I mean, that's one thing that we working as an outsourced HR provider. DISC is just one tiny part of what we do, but it dovetails with lots of areas of HR, and recruitment is one of them. So I wouldn't recruit without a DISC profile. It's good to first of all DISC your team that's there already, and then you can see the gaps in where you might have a shortfall, or you might actually say, our team is so predominantly one area, it's going to be a little bit it could be contentious to then, if you had a team full of S styles, so you're introverted, people-focused people, you could debate whether or not you wanted another S style in who's going to fit in well, or actually do you want some D style in there who's going to shake it up a bit. So yes, and it's advisable to think about what you want the behaviour styles for a role to be.
Okay, thank you. Philip also asks, this looks like it measures personality styles, but not so much how skilled people are within those styles. What would you use for that?
Okay, DISC measures behaviour styles as opposed to personality styles. So it's going to measure the typical behaviours that people will naturally exert. If you wanted to measure skills required for a role, then we would recommend something like some aptitude type tests, or maybe verbal reasoning, numerical type tests. It would completely depend on the role, but yeah, again, we would use these in conjunction with other tests when we're recruiting.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Kirsten, for hosting today's webinar. I'll send out a copy of the presentation and Kirsten's contact details out to you all this afternoon. So if you have any further questions, then you can email Kirsten direct. Thank you all again for joining us, and we hope you have a great afternoon and you join us again next week, same time, Tuesday at 12:30 for our next webinar.